This is Jeff Lax in a car doing a movie review. Don't forget to join us live Saturday night at 10:30 p.m. on 770 WABC, streaming live on WABCRadio.com for me and John Friedman talking sports. But anyway, I'm here to review Rise of Skywalker. Now, those of you who know me know that I'm a huge Star Wars fan, big fan of the original trilogy. I actually liked the prequels to a degree. I thought the first movie, Phantom Menace, was terrible, but it's still Star Wars. But I thought it was an unnecessary part of the saga. But I really did love Revenge of the Sith. Some people had questions about it. I thought it was a great gap that explained a lot about Vader and the Emperor. So I thought it was great and really added to the whole saga. And then I thought Attack of the Clones, it was okay. It showed you stuff you'd never seen before. But I really was very disappointed in every step of this sequel trilogy. I thought Force Awakens was a retread of A New Hope, Episode 4. I thought that The Last Jedi, like a lot of people thought, took the saga into a totally different direction that was not consistent with some of the characters. And I thought the storylines were overall very weak. And I really, for some reason, I had a lot of hope that it will be a lot like Revenge of the Sith, this third part of the sequel phase, and I thought that that Rise of Skywalker would mirror Revenge of the Sith and be a higher quality movie than the previous two. So I was really disappointed when I walked out. I felt the story was weak. I felt at times that there was not even a true antagonist. I mean, there were times that the Emperor, even though he looked scary, I had a lot of questions about what his actual powers were. It was not clear that he could even be killed because he was already dead. And it seemed like he was lacking a lot of powers and that he needed Kylo Ren and Rey to bring him back to life. I mean, on the one hand, they're saying he's dead, but on the other hand, they're saying that because of that symbionts in the Force, whatever they called that, I forgot the word they used, which I'd never heard before, was needed by the Emperor to sort of bring him back to life. So that seemed very strange to me, and he didn't even have, once Kylo Ren turned to the light side, which is part of the movie I actually really liked and thought it could have been done even better, but once Kylo Ren turned to the light side, I thought it was very strange to not have a true antagonist, because it really was not clear to me that the Emperor was the same imposing figure as in the original trilogy, and so you had a situation where who was Rey and Kylo Ren really going up against? This is a zombie. It's a dead person, and it seemed to me that they needed more of a challenge. These powerful Jedis who create this unique situation of strength, and who they really going up against. So I didn't really get that, and I got to admit, when they kissed, I laughed. I mean, that they were not going for humor there. So the fact that I laughed was not good. Listen, it was so, hackneyed, and I don't know. It just didn't seem like that was the right way to go with it at that moment. And then he dies. Kylo Ren dies. It's like, if you're going to go in that direction, if you're going to create this true connection, deep connection between Rey and Kylo Ren, and I thought the actors were phenomenal. I really thought they did whatever they could do with their roles, the most they could possibly do. But if you're going to create this connection and have this passionate kiss, then make something out of it. Make the new, show people sort of where now the entire Republic is going. Because there was not even a hint of that, a hint of what was going to happen. There was no government in place. It was unclear whether the First Order still even existed at all. But if you're going to connect them like that, create the setup for young Jedi, the little younglings that they teased in The Last Jedi at the end with the broom boy and using the Force. They didn't do that at all. And the end was so silly with Rey saying she's Rey Skywalker. I mean, that's just ridiculous. That's the Rise of Skywalker? So now it's Rise of Skywalker because Rey won this battle? I mean, who really is she? I understand she's Palpatine's daughter, but who really is she in the scheme of things going forward? They didn't address at all, which I thought, even my 5-year-old son, I went to see it with my family, big mistake, by the way, because 5 and 7-year-olds are going to be 5 and 7-year-olds. But even my son said to me, they didn't explain how the Emperor survived the hole. He calls it the hole when he fell down the reactor in Return of the Jedi. They didn't explain that at all, and you got to explain that, because that's a huge gap. And also, they really had an opportunity, I thought, to go back and explain some parts of the original prequels. Not the original, sorry, the prequels to the original, I meant to say. And they didn't do that either. There was no addressing of how Anakin Skywalker came to be to begin with. There were all these rumors that with the midi-chlorians, that the Emperor had created him somehow, but they didn't address that at all. It felt too easy to make Rey a Palpatine. It just seemed like they were sort of retconning the screw-ups, because there was a lot of people, you know, sort of complaining about The Last Jedi, and I was one of them. And I felt a little bad for the directors of the Rise of Skywalker, because I did feel like in the movie there were a lot of sort of hand waves to, listen, we're fixing this mistake we know you didn't like in The Last Jedi. So I get that. And I sort of am thinking, okay, it's a little harder to make a movie then on its own accord and on its own merits when you're having to fix what was wrong with the last one. Clearly they knew fans were upset with The Last Jedi. They wanted to make Luke says, I made a mistake in The Rise of Skywalker when I threw away the lightsaber. So they were trying to be cute. They tried to bring a little humor to that, but at the same time, it was a nod to the fans saying, okay, we get it. You didn't like that. That wasn't in his character. We're going to fix that. But they did a lot of things like that in the movie, and I felt like that took away from the actual plot of the movie. And the actual plot of the movie, there was no plot. What was the big storyline here except, you know, we have to beat the Emperor, which is has always been the story. It didn't explain why he's so powerful. It really didn't. Didn't explain how he set things up from the beginning. I mean, if you're going to go this route and make the Emperor the big bad through all 9 movies, then explain exactly what happened in the prequel. Explain how Anakin came to be, how Rey exactly came to be. They reference her parents, and obviously her parents, at least one of them, has got to be Palpatine's daughter or son. So, you know, you really wonder, well, how did that happen? How did the parent know who Palpatine was? Who was the parent? Why did the Palpatine skip their child and go right to the grandchild, to Rey? None of that was explained. It was so quickly addressed and then just dismissed, and you had to just accept it. So the combination between having such a weak plot line and then also having these quick corrections to The Last Jedi without developing it, you know, just saying, okay, I'm all the Sith ever when Palpatine's. And then I thought, you know, when Rey comes back, when Palpatine goes, you know, I am all the Sith, you know, Rey then comes back and says, I am all the Jedi. Okay, very nice, good line. But then why did she defeat him? It really isn't explained. She has another lightsaber, so that's enough to defeat the Emperor, who's all of a sudden so powerful because of the symbionts and the Force. That made no sense. I mean, I really wanted to accept these things, but in the end, you can't accept something that has no rationale whatsoever. Rey wasn't powerful enough to defeat the Emperor 5 minutes earlier, and then she gets a second lightsaber and suddenly makes no sense other than this is the point we want to end the movie. So if you're not going to explain it, if you're not going to have any basis, you know, fans are willing to accept even poor bases for things that we've never seen before in Star Wars and a lot of different franchises and movies. But if you're going to give no explanation at all, you don't even give us the ability to accept it. Like, I think, for example, a good example is when the movie started, it said death speaks something, the scroll. I forgot the exact language. But fans were like, all right, we'll accept it because they're at least explaining in some way the Emperor is back. We'll accept it. But then to do that with so many other things in the movie and not explain it at all, if you at least give some plausible explanation, we'll go with it. We'll take it. But if you give zero, that's something that's hard to take for fans. And I thought the storyline was very weak. Again, I thought a lack of an antagonist, because I guess they tried to make the general in the First Order who took over for Hux into a bad guy, but he wasn't scary. It didn't explain at all whether he had any relevance to the Force or how he served the Emperor. He said he served the Emperor in the Clone Wars or whatever, but didn't really explain that. And he didn't do anything scary. He wasn't imposing in any way. He wasn't an antagonist at all. He certainly couldn't wield a lightsaber, or didn't in the movie, or didn't even allude to that. And then, again, who are Rey and Kylo Ren fighting? Once that battle between the two was over, and I have to say, I did love the scene where Rey saves Kylo Ren's life. That I thought was very emotional. The actors did such a great job with it. The look on Adam Driver's face when Rey puts her hand over his stomach and he comes back to life. That was just tremendous acting. Adam Driver is a wonderful actor, and so was Daisy Ridley. So that was phenomenal. But then, once that was it, once, Kylo Ren turns to the light side, and I was willing to accept that too, because there was some explanation for that. Some people say it wasn't developed. You're right. It was a very quick turnaround. Just because Princess Leia shows up, or General Leia now shows up, and says, appears to Kylo Ren, all of a sudden, okay, he's good. Okay, but I was willing to accept that because there was some basis for it. Again, I'm willing to take these leaps if you give me some basis, but not if you give me no basis. And once they were no longer fighting each other, I just felt like there was a lack of a truly imposing figure like a Thanos, or like the Emperor from the original trilogy, or even like the Emperor in the prequels. So once that was gone, who are Kylo Ren and Rey fighting? A dead zombie-like thing? It just didn't seem threatening enough, even though he was gross to look at. I didn't like that. There were some things in the movie I really did like a lot. Like I said, I love the scene where Kylo Ren is about to defeat Rey and she kills him and then brings him back to life. I thought that was a wonderful scene. Some of the battles were good. Sometimes it was a little confusing. Like when they were having lightsaber duels through the Force. That I have to go back and watch that again and try to figure out exactly what happened. But what was the plot? That they need a GPS Waze kind of thing to find this army the Emperor has assembled? I never really got that. But again, there were some things I liked. I liked that they brought Harrison Ford back. Billy D. Williams was phenomenal as Lando Calrissian. I forgot the actor's name, but the guy from Lost who was in the Resistance, I thought he was phenomenal. And in a small role, though she actually appeared in a few scenes, Kerry Russell, tremendous, made the most also of that small role as the bounty hunter, or whatever she was exactly. Zori Bliss, I think her name was. So I liked her. And there was some nice, I liked the voices they used towards the end, all talking to Rey, Darth Vader, and they brought back all the Obi-Wan. They even used the original Obi-Wan, Alec Guinness, and they brought back James Earl Jones to do Darth Vader's voice, and I think Hayden Christensen was in there, and Yoda's voice was in there. So that was nice. They brought back really all the Jedi. I think even Qui-Gon was in there. So they brought back all those voices, but I would have liked for them to have had a scene with Hayden Christensen. I mean, that, to me, that's a big miss. How do you not bring, if you're going to bring back Hayden Christensen to do a voice, bring a little tiny scene, a little quick appearance talking to Kylo Ren, or even talking to Rey. What a huge miss that was. I thought that it was not the right thing to do, even though Billy D. Williams was great and he did a great job with the scenes and you really liked him in this movie. But was he really such a major character in the scope of these 9 movies? No. The right thing to do would have been to go back and get a serious force in the movie. Sorry, no pun intended. How do you not bring back Vader? I mean, the theme of Vader in all 9 movies is always in the background, even when he's not in the foreground. How do you not go back and get Hayden Christensen to come back as a Force ghost or in some way? It almost goes without saying if you're going to bring back the Emperor. And I like the idea of bringing back the Emperor. I just don't think it was done well. If you're going to bring back the Emperor, I think you should have brought him back in the flesh. That he's so powerful. He just didn't seem as imposing to me. The zombie-like state he was in. He needed a machine, for God's sakes, to move around. That's not imposing. That's not scary enough in terms of like believability. But if you're going to do that, bring back Vader. Bring back Vader. There's no more imposing figure than Vader. With at least bring him back in some capacity to advise, because he was such a central figure to all the movies. And even in the new trilogy, he's referenced all the time. The Mask was in the movie. I just don't know how you don't bring back the most beloved villain in all of history, much more than the Emperor. I mean, people don't talk about the Emperor as the biggest villain of all time. People think of Vader as the biggest villain, and if you're gonna close out this 9-film saga, to not bring back the truly iconic, because Vader really is probably the most iconic villain in movie history. I don't think anybody would dispute that. To not bring him back in a huge franchise like this, big miss. because it shows me you're not getting it, right? That you're not getting that he was the focus, not the Emperor. Because they thought they were going big with the Emperor, and they were. And I liked it, but you have to somehow bring back Vader. And they didn't do that. So that was a big miss. And all this would have been irrelevant if there was just a good story here, but there was no good story. What was the imposing thing they were fighting? Again, the Emperor was a zombie. It wasn't clear to me what the plan was in terms of his army. Who was running that army, really? The First Order? But not really, because the Emperor was sort of kind of circumventing the First Order. So totally unclear even what the battle was. Even unclear to me what the goal was for the first. It seemed like they were just randomly fighting at times. And again, I got to go back and watch the movie again for more details on that. But it seemed very disorganized in terms of the battles. It seemed to me that even people like Poe were at times unclear what they were fighting. It's interesting. They left certain things hanging that would, if you're going to end the saga, why leave it hanging? There's nothing to leave it hanging for. They teased that they were going to address Finn kind of having, no pun intended, an affinity for Rey. And, when they thought they were going to die, when they were sinking, and he says to Rey, I have something to tell you, and they never go back to that. So how do you not go back? If you're going to end the saga, you go back to that. You don't leave that hanging. Somehow it should come out at the end. But they didn't address that. Clearly, Finn was not into Rose. Rose obviously was into him. I was thrilled that they took out Rose. She was in the movie, but very minimally. People were saying they Jar Jar Binksed her, which is great. I'm glad they did that. I never liked her as a character. I'm glad they didn't develop her further. But I would have liked to have seen a little more with the Finn and Rey thing, because there was chemistry there, at least from Finn's side. And you want to say they knocked it away from Rey's side by making Rey kiss Kylo Ren. Okay, I buy that. But what about Finn's side of it? That stuff never got addressed, and it should have been addressed. And I thought they could have developed Poe a little bit more, too. I think the best actor of this entire trilogy was Finn. I'm just blanking now on his John Boyega. I thought he was the best actor. He is so funny. Anytime they give him any opportunity, he nails it, and I think improves on it. You get the sense, I don't know, but you get the sense that he even improvised some things and they're hilarious. He has comedic timing that I think is unsurpassed from the actors in this trilogy. Great job by Boyega, but they didn't do his character justice. They didn't develop it. He never got to tell Rey how he feels, and that was never addressed at all. And I feel like you wanted to see that. You really did. I mean, think about it. Leia and Han Solo did get that fulfillment at the end of Return of the Jedi, and that was part of the fans' love for the trilogy that did end up being requited. And I'm not saying you have to requite the love that Finn had for Rey in going the other way, but at least address it. And then if you're going to requite some element of love between Kylo Ren and Rey, do something with that. It's funny because in the moment I laugh. When Rey and Kylo Ren kissed, my reaction is, all right, come on. But then I would have been even more okay with that had they developed it a little bit, had they brought meaning to them connecting in that way and them having that kiss. And they didn't do that. So the combination of the complete lack of, I thought, a plot line. I mean, I still don't know what the story was. I really don't. The Emperor comes back. Okay, what is the big scary thing here? What are we up against? And they kept telling you how important this battle was, but they didn't really say why. I mean, they really didn't. They didn't tell me how it's going to be better either going forward. The lack of a plot line, the lack of the ability to capitalize on truly, touching, because you got the feeling they were going to try to touch the entire 9-film saga, but they really didn't. Only very minimally did they do that. In terms of explanations that were left hanging from the prequels. So those things combined, I just thought it was a disappointment. And I really wanted to love this film. I'm not one of those people who wants to go out hating films, especially in a franchise that I'm such a big fan of and love so much. And I thought I would love it. I really did. I thought with The Emperor I would love it because I love The Emperor as a character. But I didn't love it. I have to see it again. So I want to withhold, where I place it in the grand scheme of things. Maybe I'll move a little bit. I don't usually move much, but I may move a little bit in terms of where I rank it in the Star Wars, bigger picture. But I don't know. My initial impression, this is the day after seeing the film, is that it was, on the level of Attack of the Clones. Not as bad as Phantom Menace. I thought Phantom Menace was really bad, but close. It certainly wasn't anywhere near any of the original trilogy. And I don't think it was anywhere near Revenge of the Sith. To me, Revenge of the Sith is the 4th best film after the original trilogy. And this was not anywhere near any of those. I really disliked Last Jedi. I would put this a little bit ahead of that, because I think this movie had to deal with fixing Last Jedi. But in terms of where it stands after that, I'm not sure. I would say behind the top 4 that I have, and maybe somewhere ahead of, maybe not. Maybe I would put it on Phantom Menace level at some point, but I'm not sure. I got to think about that. But not good. And you don't want to end an entire saga with a mediocre movie. And the bottom line is, I thought this was a mediocre film. And if I try to always put myself in the position of, am I seeing this for the first time, not ever seeing a Star Wars film? And I understand you need the context, but assuming you could have the context, but having never seen a Star Wars film, where would I rank this? And not good. I would say 6 is the number I will come up with. Again, I sometimes will move off of that. I could see myself seeing it again, saying, all right, maybe 7, maybe 5. But my initial reaction is this is a 6 out of 10. And that's a disappointment. And I hope Star Wars comes back. I mean, I actually want people to like this film. I'm happy when I hear that people like this film because I want them to make more. I don't want to discourage Disney from making more Star Wars films, if fans don't go. So I do want people to go. I do want people to like it. And if you have a thought about why you disagree with me, please tell me. I'm willing to hear it and change my tune even a little bit, open to hearing any explanations. So tell me why you liked it, or tell me why you agree with me and didn't like it, and what you'd like to see moving forward from Star Wars, because now it's, I think, a little up in the air what they're going to do. We know where they're done with the Skywalker saga, but where are they going to go from here? All right, this movie review is by me, Jeff Flax, in a car about to drive home. Thank you for watching and listening, and you can join me and John Friedman every Saturday night at 10:30 on 770 WABC in New York, streaming live on Saturday night, WABCRadio.com. We cover sports, but occasionally we talk about other things like movies, and I'm hoping to talk a little bit about Star Wars if that comes up on our show. So I'll see you Saturday night, 10:30, WABC 770.